Tonight, I have 4 absolutely bone-chilling stories about people who thought they knew their coworkers, people they saw every single day, people they trusted, until everything changed. These are real accounts from real people across the United States, and what happened to them will make you think twice about the person sitting next to you at work. Listener discretion is advised. I'm 28 years old and my name is Christy. I'm an accountant working at a mid-sized insurance firm in downtown Denver. This story takes place about 4 years ago, and it still affects how I interact with coworkers to this day. I thought I knew everyone in my department. I was wrong. Very wrong. Let me take you back to March 2019. I was working in the accounting department on the 3rd floor of a downtown Denver office building. It was a normal corporate job. Fluorescent lights, cubicles, the usual. My team consisted of about 12 people. We all got along pretty well. Friday happy hours, birthday celebrations, the typical office dynamics. There was one guy in particular named Derek. He was in his early 40s, had been with the company for about 8 years, and worked 3 desks over from mine. Derek was quiet, not unfriendly, but quiet. He kept to himself mostly. He'd show up at 7:45 a.m. sharp every single day, work his 8 hours, leave at 4:30 p.m. Never came to the happy hours, never participated in the office Secret Santa, just did his work and went home. I never thought much about it. I had my own routine too. I came in at 8 a.m., worked steadily, left around 5:30 p.m. most days because I like to finish my current projects. Before heading home, our desks were arranged in kind of an open plan format. There were these thin cubicle walls, you know, the kind that are like 6 feet tall. You could hear people talking. You could see over them if you stood up, but mostly you had your own space. Looking back, I think that's important to the story. Things started getting weird in late March. I noticed Derek would leave his desk around 4:30 p.m., his normal time. But then, about 10 minutes later, he'd come back. Every single day. He'd walk past my desk, go to the back of the office, use the bathroom, then leave again. At first, I thought nothing of it. People use the bathroom. That's normal. But then I started paying attention to the pattern. He'd only do this when I was still at my desk. If I left early, he wouldn't come back. If I left right at 5 p.m., he wouldn't return. One day, I decided to test this theory. I packed up my stuff at 4:45 p.m. and told my coworker Jessica I was heading out. I pretended to leave, but actually stayed in the stairwell, watching through the small window in the door. Sure enough, Derek walked past my now empty desk, went to the back, came back, and then left. My heart was racing. Why would he do that? Then came the incident that made everything clear. It was a Thursday. I was working late, around 6:15 p.m. The office was almost completely empty, just me and maybe one other person on another floor. The lights were dimmed down to the evening setting. I got up to stretch and walked over to grab a file from the cabinet near Derek's desk, and I found it. A notebook, hidden inside his desk drawer. It was open, facing up, like he wanted it to be found. Or maybe he forgot to close it. I shouldn't have looked. I know I shouldn't have. But something in my gut made me pick it up. What I saw made my blood run cold. The notebook was filled with sketches, drawings of me, detailed drawings. Not innocent sketches either. Some of them showed me sleeping. Some showed me from behind. Some showed me in various positions, sitting, standing, bending over, all with specific notes written in the margins. Next to each drawing were times and dates. 3/18, 4:47 p.m., wearing blue blouse, talking on phone. 3:21, 5:15 p.m., standing by file cabinet, looking sad. 3:24, 6 p.m., stretching, thought she'd leave. He was documenting my movements, my clothing, my routines, and there was more. Pages of printed out emails, my emails that Derek had absolutely no reason to have access to. Personal emails about my boyfriend, about my family problems, about my doctor's appointments. On the last page, written in large letters, she doesn't know I'm there, but I'm always watching. I'll be there when she finally needs me. That's when everything clicked into place, because Derek's weird routine wasn't about using the bathroom. He was coming back to check if I was still there. He was documenting when I left, probably timing how long it took me to walk to my car, and suddenly, every single interaction we'd ever had took on a sinister tone. That time he accidentally ran into me in the break room and mentioned he lived near my apartment building. That time he coincidentally ended up at the same coffee shop I went to on a Saturday morning. That time he made that weird comment about how I should be more careful walking alone at night. He wasn't being friendly. He was surveilling me. He was planning something. I grabbed the notebook and ran to my car. I called the police from the parking lot. They arrived at the office about 20 minutes later and took my statement. They also took the notebook as evidence. When they found Derek's home address and did a welfare check, they made even more disturbing discoveries. His apartment was basically a shrine dedicated to me. There were printed photos of me, hundreds of them, covering every single wall. Some were from Facebook, some were screenshots from LinkedIn. Some looked like they had been taken with a telephoto lens when I didn't even know he was there. There was a map of my neighborhood with my apartment building circled in red. There were notes about my daily schedule, my favorite restaurants, my gym, the routes I took when I went jogging. Police found that Derek had accessed my company email through a security vulnerability in the office server, something the company's IT department had failed to properly secure. He was arrested that night, charged with stalking, harassment, and unauthorized computer access. During the trial, it came out that Derek had been doing this for over 2 years, not just with me. There were files on 3 other women at the company, past employees, former interns. I wasn't his first target. I'm 99% certain that if I hadn't found that notebook, Derek would have eventually done something far worse. To this day, I have nightmares about what would have happened if I'd left 5 minutes later that night, if I'd never opened that drawer, if I'd simply gone home without checking his desk. I still can't walk past an office building without getting anxiety. That was absolutely terrifying. But it gets worse, because not all predators are as obvious as Derek. Some of them hide their true nature behind a friendly smile. My name is Marcus. I'm 34 years old, and I work as a logistics coordinator at a shipping warehouse in Houston, Texas. This happened in late 2018, and it's an experience that cost me my job, but probably saved my life. I had a manager named Craig who seemed like the nicest guy you'd ever meet. Everyone loved him. Everyone. I had no idea what he was capable of. I had been working at this warehouse for about 3 years. It was honest work, not glamorous, but it paid the bills. We'd move merchandise in and out, coordinate shipments, manage inventory, that kind of thing. Craig became the warehouse manager about 6 months before this story takes place. He was in his late 50s, grandfatherly type, always had a joke ready, always remembered everyone's names. He'd bring donuts on Friday. He'd ask about your kids. He'd remember details about your life from conversations you'd had months earlier. Everyone wanted to work on his shift. Everyone wanted to impress him. I had a pretty good working relationship with Craig. He seemed to like me. He'd frequently comment on my work ethic, ask me if I wanted to move up in the company, that kind of thing. The warehouse had about 30 employees working various shifts. The facility was massive, like the size of 4 football fields. Tons of aisles, tons of machinery, tons of places where people worked alone. In late November, Craig announced that the warehouse was implementing new security measures. He'd be installing cameras in all the common areas, the break room, the offices, the loading docks. Standard corporate stuff. I thought nothing of it, but what I didn't know was that Craig had a very specific reason for installing those cameras. 1 week later, I came in for my shift at 6 a.m. The warehouse manager's office was right at the entrance of the facility. Craig's door was usually locked, but on this particular morning, it was open. I needed to grab a work order form and figured I'd just pop in and grab one from his supply cabinet. When I opened the door, I noticed something odd. There was a monitor on Craig's desk displaying camera feeds, multiple angles of the break room, but it was clearly showing recording from the night before. I didn't think much about it. I mean, we had just installed cameras. But as I was grabbing the forms, I glanced at the monitor and noticed something that made me freeze. One of the cameras was pointed at the women's locker room, inside the locker room, pointing directly at the benches where employees would change their clothes. My stomach dropped. I looked more carefully. There were multiple cameras set up, all inside, areas where people change, the women's locker room, the men's locker room, the bathroom stalls, all of them with clear angles pointing at the exact spots where people would be undressed or vulnerable. This wasn't about security. This was voyeurism. This was a crime. I immediately left the office and went to talk to one of the other guys who had been working here longer than me. His name was James. "Did you know about those cameras in the locker rooms?" I asked him. James looked confused. "What cameras?" I told him what I saw, and his face went pale. "Dude, we need to go to HR," he said. "Now." We walked to the HR office, which was in a separate administrative building across the parking lot. But on the way there, we ran into Craig. Literally, walked right into him as he was heading toward the warehouse. He was carrying an external hard drive in his hand. When he saw us, his face changed. Like a switch flipped. The friendly, grandfatherly expression vanished instantly. It was replaced by something cold, calculated, dangerous. "Where are you two going?" he asked. His voice was different too, flat, no warmth. "We need to talk to HR," I said. I tried to keep my voice steady, but I was terrified. He stepped closer to us. "I don't think that's a good idea, Marcus. You and James need to think about what you're about to accuse me of. Think about how that might look. Two guys making wild accusations about security. Cameras. Do you have proof? Did you take photos? No? It would just be your word against mine. And who do you think HR is going to believe?" That's when I realized he had completely miscalculated. We had him. We had seen it, and he knew we had seen it. I looked at James and said, "We're going to HR now." Craig's face darkened. He didn't try to stop us physically, but the look in his eyes was absolutely murderous. That's when everything made sense. Because suddenly I remembered all these little things. Craig always being in the locker room at odd times. Craig mentioning that he needed to do a security walkthrough right when female employees were changing. Craig always having his phone out, angled in weird ways. And suddenly I realized Craig wasn't just a creepy guy with a camera habit. He was a predator, a calculated, sophisticated predator who had been systematically victimizing people for who knows how long, and he had just realized that we were about to expose him. The look in his eyes when we told him we were going to HR, it wasn't embarrassment. It wasn't fear. It was fury. It was the look of someone who had been caught and had nothing left to lose. James and I made it to the HR building and explained everything. We showed them the email timestamp on when we discovered the cameras. We described exactly where they were positioned. The HR director's face went completely white. She immediately called the police. While we were giving statements to the police, Craig was in his office, destroying evidence. He was unplugging cameras. He was wiping hard drives. He was attempting to erase any trace of what he'd done. But the police arrived quickly and seized his equipment before he could complete the destruction. What they found was absolutely horrifying. Craig had recorded over 18,000 hours of footage of employees in various states of undress, footage spanning back almost 5 years. Not just from this warehouse, but from 3 previous companies where he'd worked in management positions. Police discovered he had been doing this at every job he'd ever held. He was arrested and convicted on multiple felonies. He's currently serving a 12-year sentence. But here's the part that still haunts me. If James and I had gone to our shift that morning and not needed to grab those work forms, if Craig's door had been locked, if we'd simply missed seeing that monitor, how many more women would he have victimized? As for me and James, we both were offered settlements by the company and terminated from employment. The company wanted to keep it quiet. They were terrified of the liability, so we lost our jobs for doing the right thing. I'm 99% certain that if we'd stayed quiet and minded our business, we'd probably still be working at that warehouse today. But we also would have been complicit in Craig's crimes. Some things are more important than a paycheck. My name is David. I'm 31 years old and I work in marketing at a corporate firm in Chicago. This story is about a girl named Emily, a marketing coordinator who worked on my team for about 18 months. And it's about how one person can systematically destroy another human being and face almost no consequences. Emily was 24 years old when she joined our marketing team, fresh out of college, eager, smart. She had this infectious enthusiasm that made everyone around her want to do better work. But we worked for a man named Richard. Richard was the VP of marketing, and Richard was a bully. I know bully sounds like a childish word for an adult workplace, but there's no better way to describe him. He was cruel for cruelty's sake. He enjoyed making people feel small. Richard would nitpick everyone's work. He'd criticize people publicly in meetings. He'd take credit for junior employees' ideas and present them as his own. If someone made a mistake, he'd send an email to the entire department highlighting the error with commentary like, "How could anyone miss this?" or "This is amateur work. Most people just accepted it." This was Richard. You dealt with him and moved on. But Richard seemed to have a specific target when Emily joined the team. He picked her, and he picked her relentlessly. Nothing Emily did was ever good enough. She'd work on a campaign for weeks, present it with all her research and creative direction, and Richard would say things like, "This is exactly what I would expect from someone who's never worked in a real marketing environment." Or, "Did you even try?" Emily would revise. She'd stay late. She'd ask for feedback and implement it meticulously. It didn't matter. Richard's criticisms never stopped. What made it worse was that Richard's behavior seemed to be approved by upper management. Our director never said anything. HR never said anything. It was just accepted. For Emily, coming to work became torture. Over the course of about 8 months, I watched Emily deteriorate. In month 2, she stopped raising her hand in meetings. She became quieter. By month 4, she started making mistakes. Sloppy mistakes that were completely unlike her. Like her brain couldn't focus anymore. By month 6, she was visibly anxious. She'd shake when presenting to Richard. She'd actually cry in the bathroom. I know because I overheard it from the adjacent stall one time. By month 8, she was barely eating. I noticed her clothes were getting loose. She looked exhausted all the time. One day I finally approached her and asked if she was okay. She broke down in my office. "He destroys everything I make," she said through tears. "No matter what I do, it's never right. I lay in bed at night and think about work. I can't sleep. I can't eat. I feel like I'm worthless." I told her she should go to HR. She said, "HR won't do anything. Richard has been here for 15 years. I've been here for 8 months. Who do you think they're going to believe?" I couldn't answer that because I knew she was right. Then it happened. Richard called Emily into a meeting, just her and him and 2 other senior marketers. The meeting was supposed to be about Q3 campaign strategy. Instead, Richard spent 40 minutes tearing apart every piece of work Emily had done in the past 2 quarters. He pulled up emails. He showed mistakes she'd made 6 months ago. He said things like, "I don't know what they taught you in college, but it clearly wasn't marketable skills." Emily sat there, humiliated, while senior people at the company watched and said nothing. She left that meeting and didn't come back. The next morning, she sent an email to HR and her manager saying she was resigning for personal reasons. She didn't give notice. She didn't finish any projects. She just left. I was one of the last people to see her. She came by my desk to say goodbye. She looked broken. absolutely broken. "I'm sorry I'm leaving," she said, "but I can't do this anymore. I can't keep feeling like I'm not good enough." I told her it wasn't her fault, that it was Richard, that she was talented and this wasn't her failure. But I don't know if she believed me. That's when I realized what Richard had done, because he hadn't just criticized Emily's work. He had systematically attacked her self-worth until she believed she was the problem. He'd broken her confidence so completely that she'd chosen to leave rather than stay. And the worst part? He faced absolutely no consequences. Richard was still there, still bullying people, still destroying careers, because no one stopped him. Not management, not HR, not even the people who witnessed it. We all just let it happen. I stayed with the company for another year after Emily left. I watched Richard bully 3 more junior employees. One of them had a nervous breakdown and had to take medical leave. Another transferred out of the department. Eventually, I couldn't take it anymore and I left too. Last I heard, Emily is working in a completely different field. She's doing well from what I can see on social media, but I wonder sometimes if she still thinks back to those months. I wonder if she still questions her abilities. I wonder if Richard damaged something in her that never fully healed. And Richard? He got promoted. He's now a senior director at the company. I'm 99% certain that Emily's departure had nothing to do with her abilities, and everything to do with one man's decision to use his power to hurt people, and the system allowed it. My name is Dr. Alexandra Chen. I'm 33 years old and I'm a psychiatrist. At a hospital in Boston, Massachusetts, this story is about my former mentor and colleague, and it's something that completely shattered my understanding of who I thought I knew. This happened in early 2021, and it's the most disturbing thing I've ever been involved with professionally. I had been working at Massachusetts General Hospital in Boston for about 4 years. I'm a psychiatrist specializing in adolescent mental health. Teenagers with depression, anxiety, bipolar disorder, that kind of thing. My mentor was Dr. Robert Hastings. He was 62 years old, a legendary figure in the psychiatric community. He'd been at the hospital for over 25 years. He'd written textbooks. He'd trained hundreds of residents. He was basically the godfather of psychiatric treatment in New England. I was incredibly fortunate to have Robert as my mentor. He took me under his wing when I was just starting out. He taught me how to really listen to patients, how to make accurate diagnoses, how to balance empathy with clinical judgment. Everyone respected Robert. Everyone. Patients adored him. Colleagues revered him. He seemed like the perfect psychiatrist. Kind, thoughtful, deeply committed to helping people. I wanted to be like him. In early 2021, Robert invited me to co-author a paper about adolescent depression treatment protocols. It was a huge opportunity. Being published with Robert would essentially launch my career. We worked closely for about 3 months. We'd meet in his office to discuss research. He'd review my sections. We'd go over data together. Lots of collaboration. During this time, Robert mentioned that he was reorganizing his office. He asked if I could help him move some files around. Specifically, he asked me to organize some of his older patient files, cases from the 1990s and early 2000s. I said yes, of course. It seemed like a normal request. That's when I found it. I was going through these old case files, and I noticed something odd about the documentation. Robert's notes from the 90s were incredibly detailed, more detailed than typical psychiatric notes. He'd include observations about patients' bodies, about their clothing, about their physical development. It was inappropriate. Not necessarily illegal, but inappropriate for psychiatric documentation. I thought maybe this was just a documentation style from that era. Maybe standards were different back then. But then I found something else. In one file, there was a notation: patient showing signs of adolescent development. Recommend private sessions to discuss sexuality and bodily changes for a teenage girl. And then, in the same file, there was a photograph that should not have been in a psychiatric file. It was a photo of the teenage girl in what appeared to be an intimate scenario. My hands started shaking. I kept looking through more files, and I found more photographs, more notations, pattern after pattern of Robert documenting teenage patients. Physical development, creating reasons to see them privately, making notes. That seemed designed to normalize increasingly inappropriate interactions. This wasn't sloppy documentation. This was systematic. I didn't know what to do. I was holding evidence of what appeared to be child exploitation spanning decades. I was holding proof that one of the most respected psychiatrists in the country was a predator. I closed the files and I walked out of Robert's office in a daze. I went to the bathroom and I threw up. For the next 3 days, I didn't go to work. I just sat in my apartment trying to process what I'd seen. I knew I had to report this, but I also knew that reporting it would destroy a man who had been revered in our field for decades. It would implicate the hospital. It would call into question everything he'd done over his entire career. But I also knew that if I didn't report it, I was complicit. So on the 4th day, I went to the hospital administration and reported everything I'd found. The next 12 hours were absolute chaos. Hospital administration called in legal counsel. They alerted the police. They secured all of Robert's files. They launched an investigation. Robert was questioned. He denied everything initially, but when confronted with the specific photographs and notations, his lawyer advised him to stop talking. He was arrested the following day. What came out over the next few weeks was absolutely horrifying. Robert had been sexually abusing adolescent patients for over 30 years. The hospital found documentation of at least 47 known victims. The actual number is probably much higher because many of his victims were never patients. They were friends of his children or relatives or teenagers he'd met outside of a clinical context. Police found thousands of photographs and videos, organized chronologically. Going back to the 1980s, the scope was almost incomprehensible. Robert was convicted on 89 felony counts. He's serving a 40-year sentence. But here's the thing that absolutely destroyed me. I wasn't the first person to find evidence of what Robert was doing. During the investigation, it came out that, in 1998, a patient's parent reported suspicious behavior to hospital administration. Robert was allowed to resign quietly with a recommendation letter for a new job. In 2003, another psychiatrist expressed concerns to the department head about Robert's note-taking practices. It was documented but never acted upon. In 2009, Robert was reported to the medical board for inappropriate relationships with patients. The case was closed after Robert completed a professional development course. For 30 years, people had found red flags. People had reported concerns. And each time, the system had protected him instead of stopping him, until I found those files and refused to stay silent. That's when I realized something that haunts me to this day. Because I didn't expose Robert because I was some brave whistleblower, I exposed him because I happened to open a file drawer at the exact right moment. I exposed him because I was trusted with administrative access. I exposed him because of pure chance. How many other Roberts are out there? How many predators are hiding in plain sight because no one has found the file yet? Because no one has decided to look? And how many victims could have been prevented if the system had actually acted on the reports from 1998, 2003, or 2009? The answer destroys me. I continued working at the hospital, but everything changed for me after that. I couldn't look at my colleagues without wondering if they had information they weren't sharing. I couldn't see patients without wondering if they were being harmed by someone in a position of trust. I left psychiatry entirely 2 years later. I couldn't do it anymore. The profession had been so profoundly violated by what Robert had done and by what the system had allowed that I couldn't be part of it. Now I work in medical consulting, different field, different environment, still can't fully shake the trauma of what I discovered. I'm 99% certain that Robert's victims didn't feel like his behavior came out of nowhere. They probably felt the warning signs. They probably told people. They probably watched as nothing happened, and they probably watched as he went on to hurt more people. That's the most disturbing part of this story. It wasn't what Robert did. It was what the system allowed him to keep doing. Those were 4 very disturbing coworker horror stories. 4 different scenarios. 4 different perpetrators. 4 different outcomes. But they all have one thing in common. They all involve someone who was trusted, someone who was in a position of power, someone who was able to exploit that trust and power because of broken systems, ignored warnings, or simply dumb luck. If you work in any kind of environment where you're around other people, trust your instincts. If something feels wrong, it usually is. Don't dismiss red flags because the person is popular or well-liked. Don't. Stay silent because you're worried about the consequences. And if you see something, say something, because the next victim might depend on it. If you have a workplace horror story of your own, I'd love to hear it. Send it to theunsettled.details@gmail.com with as much detail as possible. Include your name or alias, when it happened, and where. The best stories will be featured in an upcoming video. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you don't miss future uploads. I'll see you in the next one.